Hey, it's TDA. Well, you asked for it, and here it is, a brand new Dyson Sphere Let's Play. This will be all about taking the stuff we learned from the previous two runs and trying to optimize our gameplay even further than we already have. If you want to play along, as always, this is the cluster seed. I'll also put it in the description, of course. Put it in, type it in over here, this exact number, press start game, and you will be in exactly the same map as I am, in case you want to play along. Now, what we will be doing is basically optimizing the strategies that we've been employing in the previous two episodes, but even if you're a new player, I will be taking it quite slow. I will be explaining what I'm doing, so there's probably a lot to learn if you're a more experienced player as well. If you've been following this channel for a little longer, I might repeat some stuff, I hope you don't mind, but there's a lot of new players in this game after we just got a new patch, so I think it's worth repeating a few things over and over. Specifically, what will we be doing? Well, we're trying to kind of build a super facility, I would say. It is going to be a modular type of thing, so that if you do want to spread out your base a little bit more than I will be doing, you can. But at the same time, I want to be even more organized than I usually am. I hate spaghetti builds, as you probably know if you watched anything else on this channel. And yeah, just keeping everything organized will allow us to optimize what we're doing, easily find stuff. We will be using perfect ratios, and if in case you don't know what that is, that's basically making sure that every part of the build is getting the exact inputs it needs to produce whatever we want to be producing. So we're not overproducing stuff, we're not underproducing stuff, everything should be working perfectly. It's awesome to see it work when it's working, and basically I'm also trying to avoid using too much buildings that are not doing anything, and I think that was a problem in our last playthrough, especially near the end when we were getting perfect ratios built, but they were becoming very huge. So this time around I'm going to take a slightly different approach, even though we'll still be using a raw to end product type of approach, but you'll have to wait and see. Before we can do that, however, we need to first start doing stuff on our little planet. Here is our Icarus, and the first thing we need to do is make sure it doesn't look like this, because I can't stand this. This is not me. And this is. So that should work. Alright. Hey, wait. Whoa. Let's write it again. I need to apply. There we go. There we go. Pretty colors. And if you want to change the colors on your Icarus, you can just press these buttons above, and you can easily change however your Icarus looks like. You can do a lot more than that. It has no function currently in the game, so I'm not going to bother with that. But if you do want to play around with that, there's a lot of stuff you can do. Now, the first thing I recommend that you do, other than mining your landing facility, is pressing the M button so you can see the entire map. Press the N button so you flip to north, and this will orientate the planet in such a way that you have north and south, up and down, and that allows you to see, well, first of all, a lot of stuff on your planet, so you can kind of scout around, and we actually have a ton of resources around here, so pretty nice. I selected this map at random, but pretty happy with it so far. We have a ton of coal over here, so good for the proliferators. But anyway, the reason you want to do this is to make sure you build from east to west. Why do you want to do that? Well, if you... let's make sure we're actually facing north now. Yes, we are. Because if you don't do that, you typically run into a lot of issues with the lines on the planet. A sphere is not a square, so you can easily get into trouble trying to build stuff, and yeah, it just doesn't work. But it works a lot better if you do it from east to west. Now, basically, you just want to get that first research over here, and then just go to this basic logistics system. This will allow you to build belts and sorters, which are very important to build anything in this game. We also need smelters, because otherwise we have to do everything ourselves, and that is not something we want to do in an automation game. Assemblers, same reason. They make other stuff than the smelters. And after that, it really doesn't matter that much where we go, but I think we should be getting the electromagnetic matrix, because this will allow us to make science production, and that will allow us to unlock everything else. For example, this needs that blue science, so it makes sense to start there. Now, in order to build that, you open your inventory, you click on the item you want to produce, and then you simply say, hey, let's produce some of this. And we need 10 of those, so let's start with that. Now, what you also want to do is you want to cut down some trees. You will need some fuel for your mech, and yeah, that is going to be very useful to have. You also want to mine some of these rocks, because, of course, that is something we are going to need. And now we can build our first miner, and we can put up some power and stuff. Now, I am actually going to scout around this planet for a moment, see if this is actually the space that we want to start our game in, because of course I have a plan, and let's find a good position for that. So be right back. Okay, I actually found a really nice spot very close to where we started. So we started out over here. I left the landing facility intact. I reloaded just to make sure I did that, because there is actually an achievement in the game that if you leave this where it is, you only miss out on a few starting resources, but if you leave it where it is until the end of the game, you get an achievement for that. So leaving that where it is, but meanwhile I've been gathering some plants and some other things. A few things to note on that: if you find any silicon ore, organic crystal, or titanium ore, just leave it in your inventory. You have no use for it at the moment. Other than the fact that you can actually burn organic crystal as fuel for your mech, but you should not be doing that because you can use those later on. So where are we starting? Well, we're starting out in this position over here. There are two quite nice veins of copper and ore, and we did the first research, so I am going to start out placing down a little mining machine over here. You should try to have it cover 6 veins. That's quite nice in order to start out with. Of course, we need to power it up, so we're going to place a wind turbine right next to it, and now we have easy access to iron ore. We are going to want to produce a second one of those. In order to do that, we need a little bit more iron ore, and I think we should have enough. I actually have enough for 2 more. So let's queue those up, and let's wait for those to complete. And of course, you should be picking this up. It will stack up to 50, then it stops producing. In order to place down one of these, by the way, I think I should probably show you that if you're new to the game. Yeah, we should have one more coming up. If you press shift, you can make sure it doesn't snap to the grid, and then if you press R, you can kind of turn it around and get into a more optimal position. So that's easy, so you can kind of make sure it's covering all the veins. And now we do need one more windmill as well, maybe a few more. There's no such thing as too few windmills and things like that, because now of course this is not powered up. But we can walk up and down a little bit and gather some more materials. Now what we also need to do is we need to make some of these cogs and some circuit boards. Now the only thing we need to do in order to make those is actually just craft them from our inventory. So we're going to need 10 of those. We have plenty of iron by now, so that should be straightforward. And 5 of those will actually make 10, so that should make sure we get our next research. Now let's put it on the bottom over here. Let's make sure this is also powered up. Let's pick up some more iron ore. Let's get some copper ore going. We have at least automated our mining now. It's not really all the way where we want to be, but yeah. In order to get smelting going automatically, we will need to research this. That will need magnetic coils and circuit boards. And we will also want these assemblers. So in order to get that, we will need circuit boards and gears. So I'm just going to fast forward a little bit while I research all of that and then show you what you should be aiming for. Okay, I gathered up a lot of stuff. I did the first few initial researches, so we have the base items unlocked. Now remember, if you are running low on power, just put some of these logs or plant fuel in your mech. You can click an item and it will automatically fill it up. Just make sure you're not putting in the organic crystals that you get sometimes when you cut down a tree. You will need them later in the game, or at least you can use them later in the game to speed things up a little bit, so that just means that you need to hold on to them for a while. Same thing holds for the titanium ore. No use for them just yet, but you will be getting use for titanium later on, so you just keep it in your inventory for now. Now, this is an automation game. I am crafting a lot of stuff in the background, but we are actually not producing our materials automatically just yet. The way we can do that is by putting down some smelters. We need to connect the belt to the smelter like this. And then we need to have an outgoing belt or two. I am actually going to be producing 2 different items over here just for the moment. And let's put a storage box like this. And then you need to put an outgoing belt and an ingoing belt, outgoing belt and an ingoing belt, so that it's being transported. Whatever this produces is being transported on the belt onto the next sorter and then into the storage unit. Now we're going to be producing iron over here, and we are going to be producing magnets over here. Now this doesn't work without power, of course, so we are going to put down some wind turbines next to that. That should solve that issue. And now we have as much iron and as much magnets as we want. So there's that. Same thing over here. We are going to do that for the copper. So we are going to put down a little belt over here. We actually don't need that many. Copper is not being used that much in the early game. You do need it, don't get me wrong. You just don't need lots and lots of it. And a little belt once again. Incoming belts, outgoing, and then of course we have the storage unit. And then we have the little belt over here. And then let's have this produce. Once again, we need to make sure it's powered up. And we can do it like that. And now we have some iron being produced over here. Okay, time to expand our little production facility by quite a lot. I made 3 blueprints for that. And you can simply download them, copy them into your game. I'll quickly show you how you do that. So if you click create a new empty blueprint and you click that and you copy paste the blueprint into your game, then you can simply use it from the get-go. Very straightforward to use blueprints like that. And of course there will be links in the description to your blueprints for your ease, but you can of course also make your own. Starting base, part A is supposed to be the first one, obviously. And we are going to place it down, I think somewhere over here. Will that fit? Yeah, I think it will. And we are going to be placing part B quite close to that. So this is a smelting little area. This is going to be a assembler area, and I think we need to place it something like this maybe. Yeah, that should work. There we go. There are little memos on the belts to show you where you need to put in the inputs. So we have iron ore going in here, we have copper ore going in over here, and there should be another one somewhere over here. There we go. More iron coming in over here. Now I will actually upload the blueprints in such a way that you can simply connect them, because initially I placed this a little bit too close and we need to leave an open space here for proliferation. We won't be doing that in this episode because we need to do a few other things first, but just so you know, that's why there is a gap in between. It has a reason, basically. I won't have you sit through this extremely slow building, so skipping forward. Okay, and there we are. We now have something that looks like a factory. It's only a small factory, but it's quite effective, because what did we do? We are now producing both magnetic coils as well as circuit boards and some cogs and iron along the way in exactly perfect ratios. So there's a few things you need to know when you want to build your builds according to perfect ratios. First of all, you need to know, which I didn't for a very long time, that these assemblers don't actually produce at the speed you would think they do. If you look at this description, it says production speed 0.75x. That means that it is producing at 75% of the normal speed of a recipe. Why did the developers decide to do it like that? I have no idea. Specifically, these arc smelters do work at 1 times the speed, so that basically normal speed. But for some reason the Mark 1 assemblers do not. Very confusing, makes the math a little harder than it needs to be, but anyway, that's what we have, so that's what we need to work with. Now let's say, for example, you want to be producing magnetic coils. The recipe itself says this is producing 2 magnetic coils per second, and in order to do that, you need to put in 2 magnets and 1 copper. Remember, 75% speed, so actually we're not producing 2 per second, but 1.5 per second. And that also means that, of course, the inputs are required in the same ratio. So we need 1.5 magnets per second in order to supply this one assembler, and 0.75 copper in order to supply the same assembler. Now, times 2, that means we need a total of 3 magnets per second and 1.5 copper per second. And we are currently producing 3 copper per second because copper is being produced at a simple 1 per second. So times 3, because we have 3 smelters, that means we are producing 3 per second. Now, I said we needed 1.5 copper for these 2 assemblers, which is true, so that is not 3, so that's not a perfect ratio, but wait. Circuit boards also need copper, and they also need 0.75 copper per second, because again, production speed 75%. So by doing that, we now have 2 of these as well, so that is 1.5 copper requested by the circuit boards, so a total of 3 when you combine it with the magnetic coils. So that means that the exact production that these are producing is being requested by these assemblers, assuming everything is working at optimal speed. Now, I put in some boxes to make sure that this is actually going somewhere, so we can kind of stock up on some stuff. Makes it really easy to do some research if we want. And of course, you can pick them up and make some buildings, so you don't have to handcraft everything one by one. So just taking a stack, and they stack up to 200, which is really nice. So just picking up 1 stack of each should get you a very long way to not having to handcraft anything ever again. And remember, automation game, you do not want to be handcrafting if you can help it. As you can see, I can now make 70 smelters if I want, I can make 100 miners, etc, etc. So plenty of stuff to go around, and of course we're going to need all of this and a lot more, but this is just to show you how it is working. Now, same thing for the cogs. The cogs are being produced by making iron ingots into cogs at 75% speed. In this case, there's actually 3 on this belt as well, so this is making 3 per second. We are only requesting 1.5, and the reason I'm doing that is because I want a little bit of overflow of iron going on this belt, so I have an easy place to pick up some iron. But honestly, we are probably going to change this up a little bit very soon, but for now this will do. One more thing is, on a belt you can have 6 ore per second at the most, because if you look at the speed of a belt, it says transport speed 6 per second. So that means that you can have at most 6 smelters on a belt, because these are requesting 6 iron ore per second. And that means that by doing this, this belt will be completely drained, assuming of course this can actually go anywhere, which is not the case at the moment. There is a sorter missing here, which is explaining why this is stacking up, because this is not actually doing anything. Let's make this nice and aligned. There we go. And one more thing to note about sorters is the further you move them away from the station, the slower they start working. So if I connect this directly, you can see it will input at 1.5 per second, which is more than this actually needs. Well, it's not actually, it's exactly what this needs, because remember, the recipe needs 2 per second normally, times 0.75 means that we have 1.5 requesting going in, and I have a bit of power issues, but normally that would be exactly the speed that is being requested at. Now, if I move it further away, now it's 1.5, but I now do it over the other belt, and now it slows down, so the input speed is now only 0.75. So remember that if you're going to put sorters at a longer distance, the maximum distance is 3 blocks like this, so 1, 2, 3. You could in theory connect these directly, so this is a 3 space trip, but you can see the speed goes even down further to 0.5 per second. So the reason you need to remember that is because, for example, on the upper belt over here, I'm outputting 1.5 magnetic coils per second, but this is only at a 0.75 trip per second speed. So in order to actually offload 1.5 coils per second, I need 2 of these going out, otherwise it will actually be stuck in this assembler. It's little things like that, and later on in the game when you get faster sorters it's no longer an issue, but it's something to be aware of and take note of if you're making your earlier builds. Now, we have a lot of the basic stuff. What else do we need now? Well, we're working towards electromagnetic matrices, and apparently I didn't do that research yet, so let me do that and then let's start building the third part of our build. Research completed, and let's place down the third part of our starting plan. So this is a very simple science facility. It will require 2 different items going in, and I'm actually going to place it a little bit out of the way so I leave some room for the belts, like this. I'm actually crafting some more research facilities, so they should be coming in a second. As you can see, blue science, we can also look up the recipe over here, needs magnetic coils and circuit boards, which we are currently producing in large quantities, so that's really nice. So now all we need to do is put a belt all the way through, like this. And then the second belt needs to come from over here. And what we can actually do is something like this. Now, at the moment, these belts are only inputting. We also want them to output once again, and we can easily do that by doing something like this. Let's just make it 3, why not? And 3 over here as well. Yay, research achievements. Or milestone, I should say. So you have these milestones, which you get every time again once you play the game. And you have the actual achievements, which you only have to get once. And then you get to keep them forever. Now, why is this little power pole over here? Let's put it something like here. It's more nice and sweet in between. As you can see, we are now producing blue research. And these cubes are going to come in over here, and they will feed into facilities like this. And you need to set the other facilities to to research mode. They already were, never mind. No, they weren't actually. I will make sure that's the case in the blueprint, of course. And now you have your research automated. Now you actually do need to set some research, and I suggest that you go for the high efficiency plasma control first, because this will give you access to wireless power towers. And why those are very useful, I will show you. But you also need to get the fluid storage encapsulation, you need to get the plasma extractor refining, you need to get the basic chemical engineering, thermal power, hello, thermal power, yes, steel smelting, and environment modification. Now, why do you need to pick all of these things? And some of them are quite expensive. Well, we are going to automate the production of everything that is being unlocked when you do that. So we don't want to be handcrafting buildings for the rest of the game. I am still currently making some handcrafted buildings, which is fine, but like I said, you want to make sure you automate whatever you can in games like this, and that is exactly what we'll be doing. Now, I'm not gonna have you sit and wait through all that research, and if you have been playing along, maybe you already did some research by yourself, so that's really nice. But I will show you the best thing ever in the early part of the game, and that is building your first mall. And here you see why these wireless power towers are so awesome. You can simply stand in between them and they will charge up your mech really fast. They do drain your energy. As you can see, I'm now underpowered in my entire base just because these things drain a huge amount of energy. That is also why you do not want to have them just standing around. They even drain quite a bit of energy while they're not doing anything. So I recommend that you use these with care, but you keep them on you at all times. I actually don't even automate making these because I only built like maybe 3 in an entire game. Maybe 6 if you want to be really ambitious, but anyway, just delete them when you're charged up and you're good to go. Now, we covered most of our basics, but we are still lacking a few items, so we are going to be placing 6 more smelters, and we are going to put in an incoming belt in the middle. And actually, this is not in the correct position, so... In fact, if you delete stuff, you can do that one by one, but you can use the F2 button, or just press this, and you can, with the plus and minus key, scale and downscale the area that you're deleting stuff in, so that makes it a lot easier to delete large portions of your base. Easy to overlook if you don't know that it exists, so hence I figured I would mention that. So yeah, smelters, there we go. 3 of them over here, 1 belt in the middle, and then 3 more. And then we have an incoming belt that will supply some stone, and then we have an outgoing belt over here and an outgoing belt over there. And of course I will be making a blueprint for you guys, but I'm just showing you how easy it is to build these things. We want some bricks and we want some glass, and they are both made from stone. We don't need huge amounts of this stuff, but we do need some, so we might as well make it. And incoming belt, outgoing belt. As always, make sure that you finish your belts first before you start to copy them, otherwise it won't work. There we go. And now we have this mini facility where we are going to put the stone on this belt, and we will have an outgoing belt with stone over here. This is actually not stone, this is concrete, but in my mind it is called stone. Apologies for that. And hey, I'm low on energy again. Well, that's no problem, I'll just place down my power towers once again. And it's mostly the drones that are really draining your power in the early game. So as long as you make sure you place them on time, you shouldn't have any issues. But in case you were wondering what is the drain in your power, it's usually the drones. And as you can see, once you have these power towers, that's really not an issue anymore. Now, of course, we do need to get that stone in. We have a little stone facility, or stone deposit, I should say, all the way up here. So we have to draw a little belt. And I also made a tiny little factory for some coal, because I am currently low on power, which explains why I'm running out of power so fast. But coal is a really nice way. It's 1 gigajoule, so you can actually recharge your mech several times over with just this coal. And I recommend that you always carry around a little bit of extra coal, so you can refill on the spot. Don't overdo it, because you do need your inventory space, but yeah, you can of course drop a lot of this stuff in the boxes that we now have, so you don't need to carry them around all the time. Now, I am going to build a tiny little stone facility over here, draw some belts, and then we have one more thing to build before we can focus on finalizing our mall. I actually forgot one more thing while I was building this, because we also are going to need some steel. Now, the way we make steel is pretty straightforward. We are first going to place down a couple of smelters for iron, and then we are going to be putting in the belt like this, and another belt like this. We're going to have an incoming belt like this, so this is going to be the incoming belt for the ore, and we're going to have 6 smelters like so. And then in order to make the steel, we are going to leave some space in between because of proliferation. That is a very hard word. Proliferation. That was the word I was trying to get out of my mouth. Anyway, steel over here, and 6 of those. It's a 1-to-1 ratio, because if you check out the steel production, it produces 1 steel per 3 seconds, which is slower than iron, but you need 3 iron to go in, so you need 3 iron per second in total, or 3 iron per 3 seconds is 1 per second, I should say. Times 3 is 3 per second on this belt and 3 per second on this belt. And hey, look, we have exactly that being produced on the belt over there, and we have exactly 6 ore being requested by these 6 smelters, so that should work out in a perfect ratio, and that is what we do around here. Alright, so we do it like this, and we do some outgoing like this. Now we can take these 2 out. We have some smelters, some more smelters, and then we do the same thing over here. So we have an incoming belt and an outgoing belt, and then we drag those, and you can actually no, you can actually not. I was going to say you can flip them around, but that doesn't work because this one is in the middle. So we just need to do something like this, and then we have the smelters up and running here as well. Of course, we do need to hook those up to some ore, and while we have it, I think we have a, yeah, look over here, we have some of that over there. So what we can actually do is also make a last belt of iron, because I think we can use a little bit more of that, just to make sure our production is always up and running. And let's just take 6 like this, nicely organized. And then we need one more incoming belt of ore over here. And this will all be steel. Oh, let's make sure I copy the right one. So if we copy this, I think we should be able to do. Yep, there we go. And once again, make sure you wait for your belts to be constructed before you place or copy paste those buildings down. And there we go. So now we have iron on the belt, we have steel, we have glass, we have concrete, we have coils, we have circuit boards, we have some cogs over here, and now we just need to hook everything up to our mole, and I'll show you how it works. You can see it a little bit in the corner over here. It's pretty big. It's also not completed yet, so I'll make sure I finish it, and then let's walk you through the awesomeness that is a mall. So, I hear you like shopping? Well, I have the mall for you right over here. And people that have been following along with my previous series might recognize this. It is slightly altered in order to make room for proliferation in a little while. But the basic idea behind the mall is you have all basic productions set up in such a way that you'd never have to handcraft buildings ever again. If you run low on anything, just hop back to this little mall over here. A lot of people make a huge giant row of this. That works. I generally like keeping it a little bit more compact. It takes a few extra belts like that because you have to like wrap around and go back. But this is typically easier to find a spot to place down. Now, if you are building this thing, keep in mind that you want to start first setting up your production like I did. Then start out with the first part. As you can see, it starts out with belts, sorters, smelters, assemblers, power poles, power, basically the things that you need in order to build everything else. And then once you have this built and this is actually working, so connect it up first, and before you continue on with the rest, because everything else after this you don't need right away. And by making sure you complete this first, you can easily grab some belts. So say for example, hey look, I am low on belts, let's just grab 4 belts. Oh, I'm low on smelters, or assemblers most likely. There, 20 smelters, assemblers, power poles, 100 of them, there we go, etc. So it's really easy to kind of scale and continue building once you have the first initial parts set down. So make sure you do it in this specific order as well. The order is numbered in the blueprint, so just stick to that and you will be fine. Now, we are also producing quite a few other things over here. So we are producing the water pump, which we won't need for at least a few more episodes, I think. Engines are being produced next to it. We are also producing the traffic monitor. I won't really be using that, but I put it in just because you might want to use it anyway. We have some science facilities. All these storage units are set to 1 initially, or at least most of them are, except for the few that you need more of, like belts, for example. And just so you don't overproduce them, and you can make sure that the materials are reaching through and you're building a little bit of everything. Most importantly, you want to make sure that you are building a couple of these oil extractors, because that is what we'll need for red science. And of course, we need some oil refineries to go along with that as well. And then last but definitely not least, the most awesome thing in the game is foundations, and we are now including these in our mall as well. They are all the way near the end, so if you want to heavily use foundations right from the start, you should probably make a little bit more stone as well as, concrete as well as steel, because that's the only 2 things it needs, and you can set it up. As you can see, I am low on power, so the next thing that you always want to do while you're expanding your base is build a few units, hook everything up to resources, see if you're low on power. If you are, it's no point in continuing to expand your base any further, so just make sure that you then are like, hey, okay, now let's make a nice little row of wind turbines, for example, so that you can keep expanding your base and the production is actually doing something, because there's nothing worse than putting down smelters that are low on power, and then adding more smelters doesn't actually help your production at all. And wind turbines are now very easy because we're crafting those in our mall, so if you're low on turbines, then of course you can hop down to the mall and get 40 more wind turbines. I also put a little production facility for coal over here because that's what we're using to power our mech at the moment. And what's more convenient than having a little bit of coal right next to your mall. Okay, that was it for the first little bit. This took me 2 hours. It should not take you 2 hours because you are probably a lot smarter than I am and you don't have to fiddle around with placements. So just use the blueprints, make sure you stick to the order that you build in, make sure you power everything, and don't place the entire mall down before you're actually ready to build it piece by piece, because that will definitely slow you down. At least it did for me. Alright, a lot of basic stuff in this episode, but it is the foundation for everything that comes afterwards. I hope you enjoyed it, and if you did, please make sure you like and subscribe, and I will catch you in the next one.